How many times have you believed your pain was unique, that no one in the world carried the same weight as you? We cling to the illusion that our victories are eternal and our falls definitive. But could it be that we spend our whole lives living inside a theater, confusing the role we play with the essence of our soul? Socrates said that the unexamined life is not worth living, and yet we spend hours scrolling through endless feeds, comparing ourselves to strangers, racing against digital clocks, as if hurry were a virtue and consumption proof of value. But tell me, where is the wisdom in that? Where is the reflection that leads us to self-knowledge? The most provocative part is that maybe we are chasing a shadow, failing to realize that the truth is not in the role the world gave us, but in the silent observer within us. And if everything you call life is nothing more than a dream, a brief reflection, what would remain when the curtain falls? What you discover could change everything. Imagine an old mirror, stained by time. As you look, you see yourself, but the image is distorted. That's exactly how we live when we confuse appearance with essence. Our social networks, full of filters and artificial smiles, work like that mirror. They reflect something, but not the truth of the soul. The problem is that we believe that reflection as if it were absolute reality. In daily life, this shows up when someone measures their worth by the likes received or the number of followers. Ignorance is thinking virtual recognition defines virtue. The consequence: growing anxiety, masked loneliness, emptiness that no compliment fills. The philosopher Seneca warned, "He who seeks the approval of all ends up being a slave to all." Now, doesn't that sound like a perfect portrait of the digital age? The Socratic solution lies in questioning. Socrates didn't offer ready-made answers, but asked questions that poked at the soul. Self-knowledge begins when you look beyond the mirror and ask yourself, who am I without the likes? Who am I without the mask I wear every day? This reflection may feel uncomfortable, but it is the first step toward freedom. It's interesting to note that recent psychological studies show that the more time we spend on social media comparing our lives to others, the higher the risk of depression. It's no coincidence. Living trapped in illusion suffocates the soul. And where there is no authenticity, there can be no wisdom. Socrates would say, "Know thyself. The truth is not in distorted reflections, but in the silence of your conscience." Are you willing to face that silence? Because only there do you find real virtue. And have you ever caught yourself believing more in the image projected to the world than in who you really are? Think of a river in constant motion. You never step into the same water twice. Heraclitus already said, "Everything flows, nothing remains." And yet we live as if our pains and joys were fixed, as if each success or failure were tattooed into eternity. This ignorance creates attachment and suffering. Look at everyday life. We lose a job opportunity and believe that defines our destiny forever. Or we achieve something and cling to it as if life will never change, but the river keeps flowing. And we, distracted, believe we can freeze the current. The result: anguish, anxiety, inability to deal with impermanence. Philosophy invites us to another posture, to reflect on the inevitable passage of time and learn to flow with it. In psychology, research on resilience shows that people who accept change as a natural part of life are less likely to develop anxiety disorders. This echoes Socratic wisdom, not resisting the current, but questioning where the illusion of permanence comes from. Plato, in narrating the allegory of the cave, also spoke of this. We confuse shadows with reality. Clinging to the past or the future is living trapped in shadows. Only self-knowledge brings us back to the present, to the truth revealed in the now. When we recognize that everything is flow, even our pains become lighter. Virtue is not in holding the waters, but in learning to swim in them. The river reminds us, what drowns you today may be what carries you to the shore tomorrow. And have you already learned to accept the flow of life, or are you still trying to trap the river in your hands? Answer in the comments. Imagine a great theater. All of us from early on are given roles to play: the obedient child, the diligent student, the efficient professional, the fun friend. On life's stage, we change masks with every scene, but we forget who the actor behind them is. And this is the subtlest ignorance, believing we are the role and not the soul that sustains it. In modern daily life, this is even more evident. How many times have you smiled at work while inside you felt shattered? How many times have you posted a happy picture while silently battling anxiety? The consequence of this disconnection is clear: exhaustion, a sense of emptiness, a life that feels more like performance than truth. Aristotle said that virtue lies in the mean. This doesn't mean rejecting social roles, but not losing ourselves in them. Psychologists call this phenomenon imposter syndrome. When we believe our worth depends on external approval, we live for the audience, forgetting the philosophy that asks us for inner reflection. The Socratic solution lies again in questioning, am I the one wearing this mask, or is the mask wearing me? When we step back a little, we see that the actor can choose how to perform, but never ceases to be himself. This is the self-knowledge that sets us free, not denying the roles, but remembering they do not define us. In ancient Greece, theater was a metaphor for life. Today, our social networks are the same staging, only now the stage is global. The soul, however, continues to cry out for authenticity. Isn't it curious that in the midst of so much visibility, we feel increasingly invisible? The reflection is clear. Masks can be useful, but they should never imprison who you are. As Socrates said, the truth never harms a just soul. The question is, to what extent are you still living behind masks? And you, have you ever had the courage to take off one of those masks and show your true face to the world? Think of an intense dream. While you sleep, you believe fully in it. The fear, the pleasure, the danger all seem real. But when you wake up, it all dissolves into the air. And what if the life we live daily is not much different from that? This is the deepest ignorance, believing the drama is eternal when in fact it is only a passing scene. In practical life, this shows up when we treat each failure as definitive. We lose money, fail in a relationship, receive criticism, and we believe that defines who we are. But the consequence of mistaking the dream for reality is the same as the dreamer who wakes up terrified, unnecessary pain. Seneca already said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Philosophy, with its call to reflection, invites us to wake up. Socrates would remind us, question whether your pain is fact or just interpretation. Often, we suffer more from the narrative we create than from the fact itself. In contemporary psychology, studies on mindfulness prove this. People who train full awareness manage to drastically reduce anxiety because they learn to distinguish thought from reality. The dream loses its power when it is seen as a dream. The Socratic solution is clear: self-knowledge. It is realizing that the soul is not defined by the roles it plays or the dramas it faces. What remains is the observer, the consciousness, that silent truth which does not disappear when the scene ends. And perhaps the most unsettling question is this: what if everything you believe to be solid is nothing but a dream about to evaporate? And you? Have you ever experienced that feeling that everything is transient, like a dream that dissolves at dawn? Answer in the comments. Imagine yourself standing before a mirror that reflects not your face, but all your beliefs. There is displayed what you think about yourself, your victories, your failures, your masks, your fears. Now ask yourself, what if all of this is just a fragile construction, a shadow projected on Plato's cave wall? Ignorance is believing that this image is your essence. The consequence is living an entire life as a prisoner of shadows, confusing reflection with truth. This is where many remain, too busy with digital distractions, chasing external validation, fearing the silence where self-knowledge dwells. But the philosophical solution is bold. Socrates once warned, "The unexamined life is not worth living." There is no escaping this call. Questioning is necessary. Courage is necessary to look within and realize that you are not the role the world has given you. You are the consciousness that observes. You are the soul that remains when all narratives fall away. And what if everything you believe is just illusion? What if you have never truly known yourself? What if the truth is not in the answers you've collected, but in the questions you still avoid asking? Aristotle reminded us that virtue is born of habit. But what good is habit without reflection? What good is discipline without wisdom? This is the moment of decision, to keep living the comfortable dream of ignorance, or to awaken to the truth that can set the soul free. This is the climax of the journey. There is no philosophy without pain, no self-knowledge without confrontation. Only in the encounter with inner silence is real freedom discovered. And perhaps when facing this choice, you realize that the greatest prison is not the world, it is the illusion you yourself created. And do you have the courage to awaken, or would you rather remain in the shadows of the cave? Answer in the comments. Think of someone carrying many heavy suitcases on a long journey. Each suitcase represents an identity: the successful professional, the always available friend, the exemplary child, the enlightened spiritual being. At first, it may even look like a show of strength, but over time, the weight becomes unbearable. This is ignorance, believing we must carry everything to prove who we are. In modern daily life, we see this when someone tries to be perfect in every area. At work, they must be impeccable. On social media, display an enviable life. At home, never fail. The consequence is clear: exhaustion, anxiety, the feeling of never being enough. It is the prison of continuous performance. Seneca said, "He who is a slave to many things is not free." And here, philosophy steps in as liberation. Socrates calls us to questioning, and if I dropped one of these suitcases, what remains of me when I no longer carry the weight of others' approval? Reflection creates the space to see that virtue lies not in carrying, but in letting go. Psychological studies confirm people who cultivate authenticity, aligning their inner values with their actions, show higher levels of well-being and life satisfaction. Classical wisdom and modern science converge at the same point: fewer masks, more truth. Self-knowledge doesn't eliminate social roles, but it makes them lighter. When we understand that we are not the suitcase but the traveler, everything changes. The path remains the same, but the walk becomes lighter, more conscious, more truthful. And which suitcases are you still carrying that could be left along the way? Answer in the comments. Imagine the sky on a stormy night: thunder, lightning, strong winds. Everything seems chaotic. But above the clouds, the sky remains silent, untouched, serene. So it is with our consciousness. No matter how much emotions and thoughts disturb us, there is always a silent, deep, immutable space. Ignorance is to confuse ourselves with the storm, forgetting that we are also the sky. In practical life, this happens when we get stuck in an accelerated mind. Financial worries, social comparisons, constant phone notifications. The consequence is living in a continuous state of agitation, failing to notice that there is an inner space of stillness available. Digital anxiety has become so common that many believe they cannot live without constant stimulation. Socrates would say that silence is the first stone in the temple of wisdom. Philosophy here is not theory, it is practice. Meditating, walking without a phone, breathing deeply, asking yourself an inner question. All these are exercises in self-knowledge. Silence, far from being empty, is revelation. Science reinforces this. Neuroscience studies show that silence activates brain regions associated with creativity and memory. In other words, what the ancient philosopher intuited, modern science confirms. Silent reflection is not an escape, but a reunion with the soul. Virtue in this context is learning to sit with yourself without fear, because only in silence can we perceive the truth that does not appear in noise. The soul finally speaks when we stop shouting. And have you experienced the power of simply being silent to listen to yourself? Answer in the comments. Think of a flame. It is not the same as a second ago, yet it remains fire. So it is with the present, an instant that never repeats, but is always now. Ignorance is living while chasing the future or trapped in the past, forgetting that the only possible eternity is in this moment. In daily life, this shows up when someone spends the whole day worried about deadlines, goals, and comparisons, but almost never notices the taste of their own meal, the smile of a child, or the silence of the morning. The consequence? A life that seems long in commitments but short in truly lived experiences. Epictetus said, "It's not things that disturb us, but the opinion we have about them." And philosophy invites us to reflect. How can I live this moment fully without imprisoning myself in narratives of yesterday or tomorrow? Self-knowledge is born when we understand that the soul exists neither in yesterday nor in tomorrow, but only here. Studies in positive psychology show that daily gratitude practices significantly increase the sense of well-being. It's no coincidence. By giving thanks, we are pulled into the now, into the immediate truth of life. Virtue lies in inhabiting the present, not in running from it. Socrates would remind us that wisdom is not about accumulating certainties, but about cultivating presence. Because it is only in the present that we can reflect, question, and change. The now is the temple where the soul meets truth. And have you been living in the present, or are you still chasing a tomorrow that may never come? Answer in the comments. In the end, masks fall, rivers follow their course, dreams dissolve, and what remains is only the silent observer. This presence is what Socrates would call the true examined life. Wisdom is not in piling up ready-made answers, but in cultivating constant questioning. Virtue is born when we accept reflection as our guide and self-knowledge as the inevitable path. Remember, you are not the storm, you are the sky. You are not the role on the stage, you are the actor. You are not the passing illusion, but the soul that remains. This is the truth that frees and brings lightness even to the heaviest burdens. If this reflection made sense, like this video and subscribe to continue this philosophical dialogue. Now, write in the comments, what truth do you choose to remember every day? The next step may reveal something even deeper.